if the season ended after week 9. But here we are at week 10. This is a top 25 again. Before we get into our picks, we're gonna dive into these. There's only 17 games, not too many to talk about, as there's quite a bit of bye teams. We got USF, Iowa, Missouri, BYU, Oregon, Alabama, and Texas A&M are not participating this weekend. But let's get into it. Starting with the bottom half of the top 25, we have the Mean Green hosting Navy, and this is one of the few picks I think this season where we don't pick the ranked team that we have in our top 25. And on top of that, it's kind of like an interesting matchup because usually, the undefeated team should be favored, but North Texas are favored right now at the moment. The line being set at 4.5 for the Mean Green. That wasn't the reason why we picked them. We picked North Texas because they are a fast scoring offense, very similar to Texas Tech. Not apples to apples, but very close. Maybe comparing like a red apple to a green apple. Same vibe, not exact same taste. And yeah, we think this is going to be a very high scoring affair. Earlier this season, though North Texas played Army, so I think they already got kind of a feel for not again an apples to apples comparison to Army and Navy, but very similar in their offense approach. So I think that game will help prepare the Mean Green to achieve victory here against the Midshipmen and hand Navy their first loss of the season. So yeah, we're going to go with North Texas there. The next one up is Houston hosting West Virginia. Definitely not going with the Mountaineers, as I'm stumbling through that. Because they're like the second worst team in the conference at the moment. Obviously Oklahoma State, definitely the bare bottom. For the Mountaineers, first year under Rich Rod and his second stint with the program hasn't taken off so well. They also haven't gotten a conference win this season yet. Probably won't be getting one at all. And will definitely be handed another L with a trip down to H-Town. Yeah, we're definitely going to go with the Cougs. They're favored by 14 points. This line, I think out of all of them, has the highest possibility of coming true. So yeah, we think Houston would actually cover there at home. Louisville, they will be heading to Blacksburg, Virginia to take on the Hokies. First time in the top 25 in a while here at your Sports Outpost. They're also favored by 10 points there on the road. So pretty interesting to see a road team favored by so many points. Virginia Tech, they beat Cal last week. Somewhat of an impressive win. They battled through adversity, being down there at halftime by a decent amount, but come back and win in overtime. Here against Louisville, I think they get bested. A couple weeks ago, they also played Georgia Tech, so I think it'd be kind of a similar vibe there. Yeah, the Hokies fall there at home, and Louisville continues to win, as they will be setting up an interesting matchup. I think it's either next week or the week after, where they play Clemson. Next up, we have Memphis going to Houston, taking on Rice there. This game is on a Friday night, so you can definitely clear your schedule to tune in to watch the Tigers take on the Owls. Should be a blowout, I'm expecting. Another one where it's a big margin in terms of the lines being set, as Memphis is favored by 14 points. Definitely warranted. They, I think, beat the best team so far this season in the American, and that's USF. And another one where it's very possible where that minus 14 line comes true or is even covered by the Tigers there on the road. But yeah, we're definitely going to go Memphis regardless of whatever the line was being set. Virginia, they come over to the West Coast. This is going to be a very tricky game, I think, for the Cavaliers, because I would say this season has been more proving that teams on the East Coast or the Midwest that have traveled over onto the western side of the country have been struggling. We saw Florida State last week lose to Stanford. We've seen USC beat Michigan. Illinois, they go over to Washington and lose. So there's just a lot of data points that you can look at are like, man, like East Coast teams are just struggling, and the West Coast teams have been eating them up with that time difference. Oregon just beat Wisconsin. There's another example there. We see very few cases. Indiana, they did beat Oregon. That's one of the few examples that we can point and look at and be like, okay, well, there's a successful trip to the West Coast where we saw a team win. Here, this is kind of one I'm the most worried about with all my picks. Virginia, they barely get by North Carolina last week on the road, and then now they got to go to Cal, who has been struggling somewhat. They were at one point undefeated, looking like they were going to be ranked. They get shut out by San Diego State, so it's so inconsistent of a season for the Berkeley Bears. We're going to go with Virginia at the end of the day. I'm very hesitant again with this one. That's only -4 points as well. They're a favorite on the road, which is nice, but I've seen bigger margins than that and see an East Coast team lose there on the West Coast. But we're going to go with Virginia. Very hesitant there with that pick. Next up, we got Notre Dame. They're at Chestnut Hill against BC. I believe this is the largest line being set for the weekend in terms of top 25 teams. Notre Dame is favored by 28.5 points. I was already going to go with the Fighting Irish because of how bad Boston College has been this season. They lost to UConn a couple weeks ago. They lose to Louisville last week. So yeah, definitely everything's being set to where they definitely don't show up for this contest against the Irish. So yeah, let's go Notre Dame there. Tennessee versus Oklahoma. This might be the most entertaining game this upcoming weekend, or will be in that echelon between the Sooners and Volunteers. We're going to go with Tennessee. They just have, I think, a better offense. And it's going to be a similar game that John Mateer had in Boise, Idaho last year, where he just gets over-pressured. And Tennessee can bring that pressure for sure. They have some great front ends of the last couple of seasons. And I think they will definitely get to Oklahoma's quarterback, who they over-rely on way too much. They really need to establish a proper running game to kind of help him out. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're going to see something similar that we already have seen in his performance last year in Boise when he was at Washington State. So yeah, let's go Tennessee, who are only favored by 3 points. Tulane has a bye. Oh no, sorry. In my notes, they had a bye last week. They are at UTSA. Green Wave are favored by 3.5 points, which is a little concerning. UTSA has been sneaking wins, not against the best teams in the American, but when they haven't been favored, they have kind of road run over their opponents sometimes. Here against Tulane, I don't think they will have enough. I think that 3.5 points is a little misleading. I'm not really seeing what injuries that the Green Wave have suffered. But yeah, let's go Tulane. Should be a pretty good matchup there in the first half, but yeah, Green Wave pull away. Might be a similar game that they had a couple of weeks ago against East Carolina, where they won by a possession against the Pirates. So similar kind of vibes. So I think we should expect them to cover against the Roadrunners with that 3.5 line being set. Next up, we have one where we're going against the grain. A couple of weeks ago, we picked SMU on the road against Clemson. They're at Memorial Stadium. Not that we had any crazy insight. We just have been very high on the Mustangs in general. I know they had 2 unfortunate non-conference losses. They just suffered their first one this past weekend against Wake Forest, which means, yeah, we think they're going to bounce back against the Hurricanes, take it really to Miami. And I don't want to say completely expose them. I think this team is actually very similar to what Louisville has. I just think Louisville has a couple better running backs. But in terms of speed, SMU does have it. I think Rhett Lashley definitely wants to salvage this season. A win against a ranked Miami team is where I think it happens. And this could put them back into position and possibly competing for another ACC title. So it's a must-win scenario also at home. They're in Dallas, which, again, this is going to be the first time Miami's been outside the state of Florida. this season. We had to wait till week 10 for the Hurricanes to leave their home state, which is kind of crazy. But that's just the way the scheduling happens. And we're kind of expecting a game like this where the Hurricanes fall outside. And yeah, let's go SMU. Miami's favored by 11 points, but we're going against the grain and picking the ponies. As we continue now to the top half of our top 25, starting with Georgia Tech. They're in Raleigh, North Carolina, to take on the Wolfpack. Georgia Tech has been struggling before last weekend against opponents. They barely got out alive against Wake Forest. I was a couple weeks ago. I'm forgetting the win that they had. It was very, very close for the Yellow Jackets. I think it's going to be similar vibes. We can't forget also that North Carolina beat Virginia earlier this season. So I think it could be a what I think people call a trap game for the Yellow Jackets. But I definitely won't be surprised to see Georgia Tech blow out the Wolfpack, which should be happening. If you are in the AP and you're a top 10 team, you should be doing that to North Carolina State. But I just don't think that's going to happen for Georgia Tech. I think they're going to struggle for a little bit, then eventually pull away and ultimately win. They're favored by 6.5 points. I think they can more than cover this game. They should be struggling though earlier on, but then again get out alive there in Raleigh. So yeah, let's go Yellow Jackets. Next up, we got Cincinnati heading to Salt Lake City to take on Utah. This is one I might actually flip my pick when we do our Wednesday show. There's a couple of them actually in this top section where we actually might flip the pick. For again, this game very big for the Big 12, as game day will be there in Salt Lake City, kind of showcasing two programs. One that has been pretty good so far this season, since that loss in Arrowhead to Nebraska. For Utah, they have been having some woes. They had a pretty impressive win against Colorado. They absolutely obliterated the Puffs before halftime and really just sent out their second teams there in the second half. Other than that, they lost to BYU. Pretty good team in the Big 12. Should have went for some field goals. Could have possibly won that game on the road. Was a little too risky for Whittingham. Here we might see that same kind of vibe. Cincinnati has just been strategically good, I would say. They like getting up early on. Haven't been down in too many games. And I should expect to see that this upcoming weekend on the road, because it's, again, must win for them. If they want to play for a Big 12 title, possibly, this is a game where they definitely need to win. This was definitely not on my bingo card for 2025, and seeing the Bearcats be impressive this deep into the season. I would have expected them in the offseason to have lost to Baylor, but Brendan Sorsby has been improving. We'll see him continue to improve, as he should capture a win there in Salt Lake City against Utah, as Utah is actually favored by 7 points, which is also another interesting thing to look at in terms of line. So this is technically one we're also going against the grain. Next up is another Big 12 game between Texas Tech and Kansas State. This one is on the road for the Red Raiders in Manhattan. Tech is favored by 7.5 points. I think that is because of the good news of their starting quarterback coming back from injury. But we'll have to see how this defense handles Avery Johnson, who gave Kansas a lot of trouble last week. Also for Kansas State, they have like a very, very outside chance. They've only lost 2 games so far this season in conference. One against Cincinnati, and then the other was... No, wait, was it Cincinnati? I know obviously Iowa State in Ireland, because we did that watch along. I'm forgetting where they're... Oh, Baylor. Baylor was the other team that they lost to. But other than that, if they can go on a incredible run the table essentially from now until the end of the season, they have like a decent chance of somehow, some way playing for a Big 12 title. I don't think that's going to happen, because it's all going to get shut down this upcoming weekend. We'll see Texas Tech probably have a little bit of trouble in stopping Avery Johnson in the beginning of the game, but make some good adjustments and ultimately win probably getting some touchdowns from their defense, and why again that 7.5 line is being set for the Red Raiders on the road. Next up, we got Vanderbilt versus Texas. They're in Austin. The only top 25 matchup here in week 10. It's a little bit of a lull weekend, as there's many teams that have a bye and not too many top 25 matchups. Number 9 versus number 16 here at your Sports Outpost. Yeah, Vandy has been so surprising this season. I thought they would have fizzled out, would have been found out, but they just keep on running the ball effectively. I think the offense there for the Commodores just has a lot of options to it. Obviously, you have Diego Pavia, who I think at first when you look at his stats, because he's a quarterback, you're like, okay, how many passing yards is he getting? It's not too impressive there in that department. But when you look at his overall stats and his decision making when running the ball, especially in those option plays, he makes a lot of good decisions and sets up some big home runs. We saw one last week that popped off for Young, one of the running backs for the Commodores. And that offense just is super confusing. It's going to be a great test for them to take on Texas. We mentioned the Cincinnati Utah game to where we're like, we might flip a pick. This is also one where we might flip it. And I believe I'm going to do a preview of this game because it is a top 25 matchup. So we'll do an in-depth preview most likely on Wednesday and go a little deeper for this game in Austin. For Texas, man, their defense is really going to be the reason why, if they win this game, of why they capture a victory and kind of get back into the mix, not only for a berth in the college football playoff, but maybe even get back to the SEC championship game. But right now we're feeling Vandy again. Gonna be big moments that Diego Pavia delivers in. I think there was also some issues that Arch Manning was dealing with in Starkville last week. I believe he had to come out of that game, so he might not be also 100%. So that's another thing I'm worried about. The only other element that I can see Texas really take the reins and momentum is in special teams. We see Niblett, their punt returner, just make big, impactful plays for the Longhorns. Last week, we saw him score a touchdown from a punt return that sent that game into overtime and allowed Texas to get out alive in Starkville. The game against Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl, he also had a pretty big punt return, which kind of put the nail in the coffin in terms of momentum that the Sooners were trying to regain there in Dallas. And that's the only thing where I can see Texas kind of make up the differences with their defense and in special teams. But I think at the end of the day, Vanderbilt just has so much more momentum going in for them, as they've beaten 2 top 25 opponents last week with Missouri, the week before LSU, and it could be another one this time on the road in Austin against Texas. So at the moment, we're going to go with Vandy. We'll regroup on Wednesday to see where we're at, as we'll dissect every single game, and then also most likely this one. Ole Miss, they will be hosting South Carolina. They're in Oxford. Gamecocks came up short against Alabama. If I'm not mistaken, the line was very similar to what's being set this upcoming weekend against the Rebels. 12.5 points for Ole Miss. And yeah, technically, I don't think Alabama covered last weekend, so we might see a very similar game. But I think at the end of the day, Ole Miss's offense, they're really going to be able to score points. They did it against Georgia, even though they lost that game. They did it last week against Oklahoma, who actually has, I think, a pretty impressive defense. That's probably the best part of their team. And yeah, they've been scoring against everyone else. I mean, Tulane, everyone forgets that they played Tulane and blew them out earlier in the year. So for them, I think this is going to be kind of a different story, very similar to what like Texas and Tennessee had to go through with Kentucky, where we saw Kentucky take Texas to their limits, and then the week after, Tennessee, kind of obliterates the Wildcats. We'll have the similar vibe, I think, here with South Carolina taking Alabama to their limits, but then the next week they play Ole Miss and probably get obliterated. So yeah, we're going to go with the Rebels there. as it's a nice nightcap game. Next up, we have Georgia and Florida. They're on a neutral site field. I believe this one's going to be the last one in Tampa. I think next season it moves over to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, and then it moves to Jacksonville, I believe, and then it'll be back in Tampa, as that stadium will go under renovations. So that's going to just delay that game, unfortunately, for the next couple of seasons. Or it might be the last season in Jacksonville. I'm forgetting where this actually takes place. But I just know that it's going to be moving around different spots because of stadium renovations. I think it's actually Jacksonville. I'm probably saying that wrong. Regardless, I don't have that in my notes. What I do have in my notes is that Georgia is going to be easily winning this game. They are definitely going to most likely, I think, blow out Florida. At the end of the day, the Gators post Billy Napier is going to be pretty interesting. As they're, I think, coming off of a bye technically. Here against Georgia, yeah, I think Gunnar Stockton is going to have his way. I think they're going to run all over that Gator defense on top of that. So they're not going to have to pass it too much, but when they do, they'll probably hit a lot of home run plays. Then the defense should be also scoring some points against the Gators to tally on to that blowout that I'm expecting. Georgia's favored by 7.5 points on this neutral site field. Yeah, I think they're going to more than cover against Florida this upcoming weekend. Next up, we have Ohio State taking on Penn State. This game, for us in the offseason, going into looking at from like a preseason perspective, was going to be one of the biggest games of the year. Going to determine who plays in the Big Ten championship game. Turns out it's not going to be that, because Penn State hasn't won a single game in the Big Ten so far this season. I don't know if they're gonna be able to win a game in the Big Ten this season. Obviously, James Franklin has been gone. Even with his departure, haven't won a game, and I think it's continue to happen. You're without Drew Aller as well. That's your starting quarterback, so it's probably going to be even worse. And the line looks even uglier at the moment for this game in Columbus. 20.5 points for the Buckeyes. Like, yeah, I could definitely see that happening. This might be just a game where they just have their way. I was kind of bummed because I think this season would have been the season for the first time in a long time, actually, when Joe Paterno was technically in charge of that season, but by this time that game was let go or was dismissed. Because of all that stuff that happened at this end of his era. Would have been, again, a chance for the Nittany Lions to get their first win there in a very long time, but definitely is not going to happen, as Ohio State all the way. The final game to talk about here in the top 25 is Indiana heading over to Maryland. 21.5 point favorites for the Hoosiers. I definitely think they should be blowing out the Terps, who have been decent. At one point, they were undefeated. Then they lost to Washington, Nebraska, I think the week after, and kind of, I won't say capitulated, but when they come up against top-end opponents, I don't think Washington and Nebraska are top-end opponents. They're probably more mid there in the Big Ten. They just kind of get found out, and they definitely will be getting found out this upcoming weekend against Indiana. But who knows? It could be a game where we see the Hoosiers struggle. Again, they're 21.5 point favorites. I think out of all the large margins, I think the Notre Dame Boston College game can actually happen where Notre Dame covers there. And then this one between, again, the Hoosiers and the Terps, 21.5 points could be feasible for Indiana on the road there. Oh, but that's going to be the top 25 and all of the games that are occurring. Remember, there are 17 happening, a ton of buys this up.